The massive space station floated silently in the darkness between galaxies. It was called Nexus Prime, and it was older than most civilizations in the known universe. For 10,000 years, the most powerful species in the galaxy had gathered here to make decisions that shaped the fate of entire worlds. Today was no different, except for one thing. Today, they would decide what to do about humanity. High Arbiter Zethrix entered the circular chamber and took his place at the center podium. His skin glowed with soft blue light, a sign of his species' natural bioluminescence. The Valori had ruled their sector of space for over 50,000 years, and Zethrix himself had served as High Arbiter for 3 centuries. He had seen civilizations rise and fall. He had watched young species destroy themselves before they ever reached the stars. And he had presided over dozens of these summits, where the fate of emerging species was decided by those who came before them. Around him sat representatives from 11 other spacefaring civilizations. Each one controlled vast territories across the galaxy. Each one had technologies that would seem like magic to younger species. And each one believed they had the right to decide the future of others. Ambassador Thrin of the Saloxian Empire clicked her mandibles impatiently. Her insectoid body was covered in a hard shell that gleamed like polished metal. The Saloxians were known for their cold logic and their belief that emotions were a weakness. They had conquered their sector through calculation, not passion. General Vorak of the Morthok Union sat across from her, his massive reptilian form barely fitting in the chair designed for smaller species. Scars covered his scaled skin, each one a memory of battle. The Morthok were warriors, bred for combat over thousands of generations. They respected strength above all else, and had little patience for species they considered weak. The other delegates represented civilizations with their own histories, their own values, and their own reasons for being here. The Crethany Collective operated as a hive mind, millions of individuals sharing a single consciousness. The Valorian Syndicate controlled the galaxy's largest trade networks. The Nexari Dominion had mastered genetic engineering to the point where they could reshape entire ecosystems. Each of them had watched humanity from afar. Each had formed opinions about what should be done. Zethrix raised his hand, and the chamber fell silent. His voice carried through the translation matrices that allowed all species to understand each other. We are gathered to discuss the species designated as humanity. Native to the 3rd planet of a yellow star in the outer arm of the galaxy, our long-range observation drones have confirmed that they have achieved faster-than-light travel. As per the Galactic Accord signed by all member species, we must now determine their classification. He paused, letting his words settle over the assembly. There are 3 options before us. First, we may elevate them to observer status, allowing them limited contact with galactic civilization while they prove themselves worthy of full membership. Second, we may restrict them to their home system, placing barriers that prevent them from expanding until we determine they are ready. Third, we may subject them to guided development, placing them under the supervision of 1 or more member species who will control their progress. Ambassador Thrin spoke first, her voice a series of clicks that the translation matrix converted to speech. I have studied the human broadcasts we have intercepted over the past 2 centuries. They are a violent species. They wage war constantly, not just against other species, but against themselves. Their history is filled with conflict, destruction, and suffering that they inflict upon their own kind. I recommend the 3rd option. They must be controlled before they spread their chaos to the rest of the galaxy. General Vorak let out a low growl that might have been laughter. I agree that they are violent, but violence alone does not concern me. What concerns me is their unpredictability. My war analysts have studied their conflicts, and they cannot find logical patterns. Humans will fight hopeless battles they cannot win, and then surrender advantages when victory is certain. They make no sense. A species that cannot be predicted cannot be trusted. A delegate from the Crethany Collective spoke next, multiple voices harmonizing into one. We have observed their biological development. They are physically weak compared to most spacefaring species. Short lifespans, fragile bodies, limited natural abilities. Yet somehow they have progressed from primitive tools to interstellar travel in a remarkably short time. This speed concerns us. They are not following normal development patterns. The discussion continued for hours. Some delegates argued for immediate containment. Others suggested observation. A few even proposed elimination, though this was quickly dismissed as too extreme. Throughout it all, the humans were spoken about as objects to be managed, problems to be solved, or threats to be contained. Not once did anyone suggest asking the humans themselves what they wanted. This was the way things had always been done. Young species did not get a voice in their own fate. They were guided, controlled, or destroyed based on the wisdom of those who had come before. The Galactic Accord had maintained peace and stability for 10,000 years precisely, because emerging species were managed carefully before they could disrupt the established order. None of the delegates noticed the small anomaly in the stations. Communication systems. It was subtle, a tiny fluctuation in the data streams that most sensors would dismiss as background noise. But it was not noise. It was humanity, listening to every word. 30 light-years away, in a bunker buried deep beneath the Nevada desert. Admiral Grace Mitchell watched the alien summit through a holographic display. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her uniform bore the insignia of Earth's United Defense Command. She had served in 3 wars before being assigned to this project, and nothing in her military career had prepared her for what she had learned over the past 15 years. Beside her stood Commander Daniel Pierce, a younger officer with sharp eyes and a reputation for creative thinking. On her other side was Dr. Linda Santos, a physicist who had spent the last decade reverse engineering technology that should not have existed. "They're going to vote on us like we're cattle," Daniel said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Grace did not respond immediately. She watched as another alien delegate suggested placing humanity under Morthok supervision, essentially making humans a subject species to be trained like animals. Her jaw tightened. 15 years, she said quietly. 15 years we've been listening, learning, preparing. They think we're primitives who just discovered fire and stumbled into space travel. They have no idea what we've been building. Linda pulled up another display showing installations on the Moon, Mars, and hidden facilities throughout the solar system. "All systems are ready, Admiral. Project Looking Glass has given us everything we need. We know their languages, their politics, their weaknesses. The question is what we do with that knowledge." Grace turned from the alien broadcast and faced her team. In this room were the only people on Earth who knew the full truth about humanity's situation. They had kept the secret for 15 years, building in silence, while the rest of humanity went about their lives unaware. "They gathered to decide our future," Grace said. "But we're going to show them that humanity decides its own fate. Activate protocol handshake. We're going to introduce ourselves." The order was given, and across the solar system, systems that had been dormant for years came to life. Humanity's response to the galactic community had begun. The debate in the Nexus Prime Chamber had been going on for nearly 6 standard hours. Delegates argued back and forth about quotas, supervision methods, and containment protocols. High Arbiter Zethrix was beginning to think they might need to extend the summit by another day when every alarm in the station suddenly activated at once. Red warning lights flashed across the chamber. Emergency sirens filled the air. The holographic displays that had been showing voting options suddenly switched to external sensor feeds, and what they showed made every delegate in the room freeze. A ship had appeared out of nowhere, less than a kilometer from the station. It had emerged from hyperspace so close that the station's defensive systems had not even had time to track it. This was supposed to be impossible. The location of Nexus Prime was the most closely guarded secret in the galaxy. The coordinates were known only to the highest officials of each member species, and the station itself was protected by jamming fields that should have prevented any unauthorized vessel from finding it. Yet there it was. A ship unlike anything in galactic records. The vessel was angular and efficient, its hull covered in a strange material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It was smaller than most capital ships, but something about its design suggested power carefully contained. Weapon systems were visible along its sides, though they remained inactive. The ship simply hung there in space, waiting. General Vorak was the first to react. "Destroy it," he commanded, reaching for his personal communicator to order his own fleet into action. "Whatever it is, it has violated the sanctity of this summit." "Wait," Zethric said, holding up his hand. "Look at the energy signatures. Those weapons are not aimed at us. And if they had wanted to attack, they would not have announced their press." And Ambassador Thrin's compound eyes scanned the sensor data rapidly. The design matches no known civilization. The power output is ... unusual. It should not be possible for a ship that size to generate those readings. Before anyone could respond, a message came through on all frequencies. The translation matrices struggled for a moment with the unfamiliar language before finally producing words that every delegate could understand. "This is the Earth vessel Endeavor. We request permission to join your discussion, as we believe it concerns us directly." Silence fell over the chamber. For a long moment, no one moved. Then chaos erupted. The Krathni delegates began buzzing in their hive speech. Millions of minds processing this impossibility at once. The Valorian syndicate representative immediately began calculating trade implications. General Vorak roared for his weapons to be brought online, while Ambassador Thrin demanded to know which species had leaked the summit's location. Shrix called for order, but his voice was lost in the noise. He was about to activate the emergency protocols that would seal the chamber and summon security forces when 3 columns of light appeared in the center of the room. The light faded, and 3 humans stood where nothing had been a moment before. They had teleported directly into the most secure chamber in the galaxy, bypassing every shield, every barrier, and every security system that 10,000 years of engineering had produced. Several delegates reached for weapons. Others backed away in fear. The Krathoni stopped buzzing entirely, their collective mind overwhelmed by what they were witnessing. The human at the front was a tall man with broad shoulders and calm eyes. He wore a simple gray uniform with no visible weapons, and his posture suggested complete confidence, despite being surrounded by species that could kill him in an instant. His name was Captain Nathan Cole. He had volunteered for this mission, knowing he might not survive it. To his left stood Lieutenant Commander Maria Vega, a woman with dark hair and sharp features. She had spent 10 years studying alien psychology through intercepted communications, and she understood these species better than they understood themselves. Her role was to read the room, to identify threats and opportunities, and to help Nathan navigate the complex politics of beings who had never dealt with humans before, too. Nathan's right was Dr. Howard Kim, the chief science officer of the Endeavor and one of the brightest minds Earth had ever produced. He carried a small device on his wrist that contained more information about human civilization than any alien probe had ever collected. His job was to show these ancient species that humanity was more than the violent primitives they believed them to be. "Apologies for the intrusion," Nathan said, his voice steady and clear. "But we felt it was inappropriate for decisions about our future to be made without our input." Zethric stared at the humans for a long moment. His skin had shifted from blue to deep purple, an indication of extreme stress in his species. "This is not possible," he said finally. "You should not be here. Your species has only just achieved faster-than-light travel. You cannot have found this location. You cannot have bypassed our security." "And yet here we are," Maria said, stepping forward slightly. "Perhaps your assumptions about our species need updating." General Vorak pushed through the other delegates until he stood directly in front of Nathan. The Morthok towered over the human by nearly 2 feet, his scaled body radiating the barely contained violence of a born predator. "Give me one reason why I should not kill you where you stand," growled. Nathan looked up at the alien warrior without flinching. "Because killing us would not change anything. There are 4 billion more humans where we came from, and they all know about this summit. If we do not return, others will come, and they might not be as polite." The threat hung in the air, but it was delivered without malice, without anger. It was simply a statement of fact. Dr. Kim activated his wrist device, and holographic images began appearing throughout the chamber. They showed Earth's cities, its natural beauty, its art and music and architecture. They showed humans building, creating, exploring. They also showed wars and destruction. But these images were followed by reconstruction, recovery, and renewal. "You have watched us from afar," Howard said, his voice calm and measured. "Your probes have intercepted our radio broadcasts, our television signals, our digital communications. You have seen our worst moments, broadcast into space for anyone to receive. But you have never understood the context. The images shifted to show hospitals being built after earthquakes, aid workers delivering food to war zones, scientists working together across national borders to solve problems, artists creating beauty from tragedy. Every war you witnessed ended," Howard continued. "Every catastrophe was overcome. We are not a species defined by our conflicts. We are a species defined by our ability to survive them and become stronger." Ambassador Thrin clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "Pretty pictures prove nothing. Any species can present themselves favorably when they choose what to show." "Well, you are correct," Nathan said. "Which is why we are not here to ask for your approval. We are here to inform you that we will be part of this community, whether you vote for it or not. The only question is whether we do so as partners or as rivals." Zethryx raised his hand, and the chamber fell silent again. His skin had shifted to a pale silver, an indication that he was thinking deeply. "You have violated every protocol of the Galactic Accord. You have infiltrated our most secure facility. You have threatened the assembled delegates of the 12 most powerful civilizations in the galaxy." He paused. "And you have done all of this with 3 individuals in 1 ship." "That is correct," Nathan said.
House.
Zethryx said slowly, "We should hear what else you have to say." The chamber had grown quiet as the delegates considered the situation. For the first time in thousands of years, a young species had forced its way into the galactic conversation. Some viewed this as an insult. Others saw it as an interesting development. A few were already calculating how to use these humans for their own purposes. "Ambassador." Thrin was the first to speak after the long silence. "Your arrival proves nothing except that you are capable of deception and infiltration. These are not qualities that recommend you for membership in civilized society. Then what would recommend us?" Nathan asked. General Vorak stepped forward, his scales reflecting the chamber lights. "The trial of ascension. Every species that has ever been granted recognition by this body has been required to pass it. 3 challenges that test wisdom, cooperation, and strength. Fail any one of them, and you will be confined to your home system for the next 1,000 years. Nathan looked at his companions. Maria gave a slight nod, her expression thoughtful. Howard checked something on his wrist device and shrugged. They had prepared for many possibilities, but this was not one of them. The intercepted communications had never mentioned any trial. "We accept," Nathan said. The words seemed to surprise some of the delegates. The Crithoni collective buzzed among themselves. A few representatives exchanged glances that suggested they had expected the humans to refuse or negotiate. "You accept without knowing what the challenges involve?" Zethryx asked. "You said the trials test wisdom, cooperation, and strength," Nathan replied. "These are qualities we value as well. Whatever the specific challenges, we are confident in our ability to meet them." Vorak made a sound that might have been approval. "Bold words. Let us see if you can support them with action." The first trial began within hours. It was called the Puzzle of Zor, named after the ancient Valori philosopher who had created it. The puzzle was a mathematical construct of staggering complexity, involving equations that spanned multiple dimensions and variables that changed based on observation. Most species required teams of hundreds working for months to solve it. The fastest recorded time was 47 days, set by the Cressony Collective using their combined mental processing power. Maria and Howard were given a single room with basic computing equipment and told they had 100 hours to complete the puzzle or admit defeat. They finished in 18 hours. The solution came not through brute force calculation, but through what Howard later described as creative shortcuts. Maria had noticed patterns in the variable changes that reminded her of music theory, Howard had recognized structural similarities to biological systems he had studied on Earth. Together, they had approached the ancient puzzle not as a mathematical problem to be solved, but as a language to be understood. When they presented their solution, the Valori mathematicians who had overseen the trial spent 3 hours verifying their work. They found no errors. The puzzle had been solved in the fastest time in recorded history, by a species that had been considered too primitive to understand basic hyperspace physics. The second trial was the Harmony Protocol, a diplomatic simulation designed to test a species' ability to create peace between opposing forces. The simulation presented to virtual civilizations with completely opposite values. One believed in absolute individual freedom, rejecting any form of collective authority. The other believed in total conformity, where individual desires were subordinated to the needs of the whole. The two civilizations had been at war for virtual centuries, and every previous attempt at negotiation had failed. Nathan entered the simulation alone. He spent 4 hours listening to both sides, asking questions and taking notes. The observers expected him to propose a compromise, some middle ground where both sides would give up part of what they wanted. Every previous species had attempted this approach. Nathan did something different. He pointed out that both civilizations had the same fundamental goal: the happiness and fulfillment of their people. The individualists pursued this through personal freedom. The collectivists pursued it through shared purpose. The conflict arose not from incompatible goals, but from incompatible methods. His proposal was simple. Instead of forcing either side to abandon their approach, create separate regions where each civilization could live according to their values. With trade and cultural exchange between them, those who felt drawn to the other way of life could relocate freely. Over time, both civilizations would learn from each other, adopting the best elements of each approach while maintaining their core identities. The simulation ended with both virtual civilizations agreeing to the proposal. The observers noted that this was only the third time in the history of the trial that a lasting peace had been achieved. The other 2 times had involved civilizations with over 10,000 years of diplomatic experience. The third trial was combat. General Vorak himself entered the arena to face Captain Cole. The Morthok had not personally fought in the trials for over 2 centuries, but he had been impressed by the humans' performance and wanted to test them himself. His species had been bred for war for 50,000 years. Their bones were twice as dense as human bones. Their muscles were 3 times as strong. Their reflexes had been honed by generations of natural selection that favored only the deadliest warriors. Nathan Cole was a naval officer who had trained in hand-to-hand combat but had never faced anything like a Morthok in battle. The arena was a circular space with no weapons, no obstacles, and no rules except that killing was forbidden. The fight would continue until one combatant surrendered or was unable to continue. Vorak attacked immediately, expecting to end the fight quickly. His massive fist swung toward Nathan's head with enough force to shatter concrete. But Nathan was not there. He had moved before the blow was launched. Reading the Morthok's body language and anticipating the attack, the fight continued for 12 minutes. Vorak attacked with overwhelming power, each strike capable of ending the match instantly. Nathan never tried to match that power. Instead, he moved constantly, staying just out of reach, letting Vorak's attacks miss by inches. When openings appeared, Nathan struck quick blows to sensitive areas, nerve clusters and pressure points he had learned about from captured alien medical data. None of Nathan's strikes were powerful enough to truly hurt Vorak, but they were annoying, distracting, and they accumulated. After 12 minutes, Vorak was breathing heavily. His attacks had grown slower as frustration clouded his judgment. Nathan had taken a few glancing blows but remained mobile and alert. Finally, Vorak stopped. He stood in the center of the arena and looked at his opponent with something that might have been respect. "You fight like water," he said. "I strike at you, and you flow around my attacks. I try to grab you, and you slip through my fingers. I have fought warriors from 100 species, and none have frustrated me as much as you. Is the trial over? Nathan asked. Vorak nodded slowly. The trial was never about defeating me. It was about surviving against a superior opponent. You have done more than survive. You have shown that physical strength is not the only form of power. He turned to the observers. The human has passed. When all 3 trials were complete, the delegates reconvened in the main chamber. The humans stood where they had first appeared, but the atmosphere had changed. Where there had been dismissal and contempt, there was now curiosity and cautious respect. No species in recorded history has completed all 3 trials in less than 72 hours, Zethryx announced. You have done it in less than 40. This is... unprecedented. Does this mean we are recognized? Maria asked. Zethryx's skin shifted through several colors before settling on a thoughtful gold. It means we must reconsider our assumptions about your species. But there are still questions that must be answered. The chamber had changed since the humans first arrived. The delegates who had spoken of containment and control now sat quietly, reconsidering their positions. The trials had proven that humanity was more than they had assumed. But High Arbiter Zethryx still had concerns that went beyond test results. Before we proceed with any vote, Zethryx said, his luminescent skin pulsing with deep violet light, I must ask the humans a question that has troubled me since you first appeared in this chamber. How did you truly find this location? The coordinates of Nexus Prime are the most closely guarded secret in the galaxy. Our security protocols have protected these summits for over 10,000 years. No species has ever breached them. Nathan Cole looked at his companions. They had prepared for this moment, knowing it would come eventually. The truth would either earn them respect or make them enemies of every power in the galaxy. There was no middle ground. We did not find this location, Nathan said. We have known about it for 15 years. Statement landed like a bomb in the silent chamber. Delegates who had been listening calmly suddenly sat forward in their seats. General Vorak's eyes narrowed dangerously. Ambassador Thrin's mandibles clicked rapidly. A sign of extreme agitation in her species, explained Zethryx demanded. 15 years ago, one of your long-range probe ships suffered a malfunction near our solar system, Nathan continued. The vessel crashed on Earth in a remote region of one of our northern continents. Our governments recovered the wreckage before any of your retrieval teams could locate it. Dr. Howard Kim activated his wrist device and technical schematics appeared in the air above the chamber. They showed the probe in detail, its communication systems, its navigation equipment, its data storage cores. The probe's communication array was damaged, but not destroyed, Howard explained. Our scientists spent 3 years reverse engineering its systems. Once we understood how it worked, we were able to intercept your transmissions. Not all of them, of course. Your encryption is excellent, but enough to piece together the basics of galactic politics, trade routes, and the existence of this summit. The chamber erupted in noise. The Chthoni collective buzzed so loudly that the translation matrices struggled to keep up. Several delegates accused others of negligence, demanding to know how a probe had been lost without proper investigation. General Vorak was already calculating the military implications of what he had just learned. Zethryx raised his hand for silence. When the noise continued, he activated an override that muted all translation except his own voice. Let them finish, he commanded. Nathan nodded in appreciation. For 15 years we have been listening and learning. We mapped your political alliances and rivalries. We studied your technologies through the fragments we could intercept. And we prepared. Maria Vega stepped forward, her expression serious. We knew this summit was coming. We knew what you intended to decide. And we knew that if we simply waited for your verdict, we would have no say in our own fate. That was not acceptable. So you chose to deceive us, Ambassador Thrin said, her voice cold. You spied on our communications, stole our technology, and infiltrated our most secure gathering. These are not the actions of a species seeking peaceful coexistence. These are the actions of a species that refused to be helpless, Nathan replied. Put yourself in our position. You discover that your planet is being watched by civilizations thousands of years more advanced than your own. You learn that these civilizations will soon decide your future without consulting you. What would you do? Wait and hope they make the right choice? Or prepare to make sure your voice is heard? The question hung in the air. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Valori had once been a young species themselves, watched and judged by older civilizations. The Morthok had earned their place in the galactic community through conquest, not waiting for permission. Even the Selexians, for all their talk of logic and order, had risen to power through carefully planned manipulation of their rivals. Howard Kim activated another display. This one showed images of installations hidden throughout Earth's solar system. Bases on the Moon, underground facilities on Mars, weapons platforms concealed in the asteroid belt, and listening posts scattered across the outer planets. In the 15 years since we discovered your existence, humanity has made certain preparations, Howard said. We have mapped every major hyperspace lane in our galactic arm. We have identified 17 habitable worlds within our reach. And we have developed defensive technologies that we believe would give any potential aggressor significant pause. The images showed energy shields, weapon systems, and ships under construction. None of it matched galactic technology exactly. The humans had taken what they could understand from intercepted data and combined it with their own innovations to create something new. We are not presenting this as a threat, Maria added quickly. We are presenting this as context. You gathered here to discuss our future as if we were children who needed to be told when to sleep. We are not. Children, we took the tools you accidentally gave us and taught ourselves to walk among the stars in a single generation. You can choose to see this as dangerous or as impressive. That choice is yours. General Vorak stood slowly. His expression was difficult to read, but his posture had changed from hostile to something closer to thoughtful. You were saying that a species with no faster-than-light capability 15 years ago has built a defensive network capable of threatening established galactic powers? We are saying that we built what was necessary to protect ourselves, Nathan said. Whether it is enough to threaten anyone else is a question we hope we never have to answer. Zethrix's skin cycled through several colors before settling on a pale gold that indicated deep respect mixed with concern. You have deceived the entire conclave. You have infiltrated our communications. You have developed technology we did not believe possible for a species at your stage of development. He paused, his glowing eyes fixed on Nathan. And you did all of this not to attack us, but to ensure your own voice would be heard. Yes, Nathan said simply. The High Arbiter turned to face the other delegates. I have presided over these summits for 3 centuries. I have seen young species grovel for acceptance and others rage against our judgment. I have never seen one do what these humans have done. They have taken our own methods and used them against us, not for conquest, but for the simple right to speak for themselves. Ambassador Thrin clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. This changes everything. If they have been monitoring our communications, they know our weaknesses, our internal conflicts, our trade disputes. They could have used this information as leverage. They could have played our civilizations against each other. But we did not, Maria said, because that is not who we are. We want to be part of your community, not destroy it. We used what we learned to prepare for this moment, to earn the chance to speak as equals. Nothing more. The chamber fell silent as the delegates processed what they had heard. The vote they had planned to take, the simple decision about how to manage a primitive species, no longer made sense. The humans had changed the game entirely. What exactly do you propose? Zethrix asked finally. Nathan smiled slightly. It was the question they had been waiting for. A partnership, he said. Not supervision, not containment, not guided development. A genuine partnership between equals. And to prove that we mean it, we have brought something else to share. The delegates watched as Dr. Howard Kim activated his wrist device one more time. New holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber. But these were different from the earlier images of human cities and defensive installations. These were scientific diagrams, medical formulas, and engineering schematics. During the 15 years we spent preparing for this moment, Howard said, we did not focus only on defense. Our scientists studied every piece of data we could intercept about galactic civilization. And in that data, we found problems. Problems that your civilizations have been struggling with for centuries or even millennia. He gestured toward a complex molecular diagram. The Crethony Plague. Your collective has been fighting this disease for over 800 years. It killed billions of your people before you developed treatments that could slow its spread. But you never found a cure. Ethanite's representatives fell completely silent. The plague was the great tragedy of their civilization, a wound that had never fully healed. We believe we have found one, Howard continued. Our biologists approached the problem differently than yours. We looked at similar diseases in Earth's organisms and found patterns that your researchers had missed. The cure needs to be tested, of course. We are not certain it will work, but our models suggest a 93% probability of success. He moved to another display, this one showing energy flow diagrams. The Outer Rim Energy Crisis. For 2,000 years, colonies on the edge of galactic civilization have struggled with power shortages because they are too far from major energy sources. The Valorian Syndicate has made fortunes selling expensive fuel, too desperate. Populations. The Valorian delegate shifted uncomfortably in his seat. We have developed a new type of power generation that uses ambient cosmic radiation, Howard said. It is not as powerful as your standard reactors, but it works anywhere. Any colony could build one with basic materials. The energy crisis could be solved within a decade. More displays appeared. Solutions to territorial disputes that had kept the Seluxians and Morthok on the edge of war for centuries. New agricultural techniques that could feed worlds currently facing food shortages. Communication protocols that could allow the hive mind Crethoni to interact more easily with individual-based civilizations. You spent 15 years spying on us? Ambassador Thrin said slowly. And you used that time to solve our problems? We used that time to try, Nathan said. We are not certain all of these solutions will work. Some may need adjustment. Others may fail entirely. But we wanted to show you what humanity could offer as a partner, not as a subject species to be controlled. General Vorak stood and walked slowly toward the human delegation. His massive form still towered over them, but his posture had changed entirely. There was no threat in his stance now, only curiosity. You magnificent lunatics, he said quietly. You spent 15 years preparing to fight us, and you spent those same 15 years preparing to help us? We prepared for both possibilities, Maria replied. We hoped we would only need one. High Arbiter Zetherix looked around the chamber at his fellow delegates. The expressions on their faces ranged from shock to admiration to careful calculation. The vote they had planned to take was no longer relevant. The humans had not come seeking permission to exist. They had come offering partnership, backed by both the strength to defend themselves and the desire to contribute. I propose we set aside the original agenda, Zetherix said. The question before us is no longer how to manage humanity. The question is whether we are wise enough to accept what they are offering. The debate that followed lasted for hours. But it was a different kind of debate than the one that had preceded the humans' arrival. Delegates discussed trade agreements, scientific exchanges, and diplomatic protocols. They argued about details and timelines. It's not about whether humans should be contained or controlled. In the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would be granted full recognition as a member of the galactic community, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. The document that recorded this decision was called the Treaty of First Contact. It was unlike any treaty the Conclave had ever produced. It did not list restrictions or requirements. It outlined opportunities and commitments. 3 months later, the Endeavor returned to Earth orbit. But it did not come alone. Ships from 6 different civilizations accompanied it, their hulls bearing markings that had never been seen in Earth's solar system before. The people of Earth, who had only recently learned the full truth about humanity's situation, watched in wonder as the alien vessels took up positions around their planet. Admiral Grace Mitchell stood on the observation deck of the orbital command station, watching the fleet assemble. Beside her was Dr. Linda Santos, who had done more than anyone to make this moment possible. Expected to decide our future, Linda said quietly. Grace nodded. They did. But we decided it first. We just let them think it was their idea. Far away on Nexus Prime, High Arbiter Zethryx was recording his personal observations about the summit in his private archive. He had served as Arbiter for 3 centuries and had overseen the admission of 7 new species to the galactic community. None of those events had been like this. The humans he recorded have changed everything. Not through conquest or manipulation, but through something I did not expect. They took our fear of them and transformed it into curiosity. They took our dismissal and earned our respect. They came to a gathering that was meant to decide their fate, and they showed us that they had already decided it themselves. He paused, his luminescent skin shifting through colors that reflected his complicated emotions. But what impressed me most was not their technology or their tactics. It was their final offer. They did not demand acceptance. They offered partnership. They gave us solutions to problems we had struggled with for millennia, not as payment for recognition, but as proof of what we could accomplish together. The archive recording continued. For 10,000 years, the Conclave has decided the fate of young species. We have controlled them, guided them, and sometimes destroyed them, all in the name of maintaining galactic stability. The humans have shown us a different path. They have shown us that young species might have something to teach us if we are willing to listen. Back on Earth, the celebrations continued as humanity took its first steps into a larger universe. There would be challenges ahead, certainly. Old prejudices would not disappear overnight. Some alien civilizations would resent the newcomers. Some humans would fear their new neighbors. The partnership would be tested many times in the years to come. But on this day, as alien ships orbited Earth for the first time in peace, the future looked brighter than anyone had dared to imagine. The Conclave had gathered to decide humanity's fate. But humanity had arrived with a different question entirely. Not what would be done to them, but what could.